If you want to know what someone really thinks of you, listen to how they talk when they think you are too small to matter. My mother Susan did not even look up from her lobster bisque. It is a mercy, really, she said, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light. Some people are built for leadership and some are built for data entry. Natalie is happy in her little clerk job. Why burden her with ambition she cannot handle? My father Geoffrey chuckled, pouring himself another glass of wine that cost more than my first car. Exactly. We are about to close the biggest deal of our lives selling Miller Logistics for millions. Imagine trying to explain equity splits to her. She would probably ask if it comes with dental. They both laughed, a rich clinking sound that filled the high ceilings of their mansion. I sat at the far end of the table, the spot usually reserved for children or guests they did not really want. I kept cutting my steak precise and silent. "Oh, Natalie," my father called out, finally acknowledging my presence. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wrinkled $20 bill. He flicked it across the mahogany table like he was tipping a valet. "For gas money. I know things are tight on a clerk's salary. Don't spend it all on cat food." I picked up the bill. It was warm from his pocket. My mother smiled that pitying smile she reserved for stray dogs and disappointing daughters. "Take it, sweetie. You need it more than we do." I looked at the money, then I looked at them. They saw a daughter who needed charity. They did not see the woman who had spent the last decade building Apex Innovations from a laptop in a dorm room into a 9-figure holding company. They did not know that Miller Logistics was not being sold to a mysterious conglomerate. It was being sold to me, and I had signed the acquisition papers exactly 45 minutes ago. I folded the $20 bill and put it in my pocket. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "I will make sure to put this towards something important. Drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. I would love to know who is part of our community." I did not slam the door when I left. Slamming doors implies you want someone to chase you. I closed it softly with the finality of a bank vault locking at 5 o'clock. I walked 2 blocks down the street away from the manicured lawns and the performative wealth of my parents' neighborhood. My car was waiting under a street lamp, a matte black sedan with tinted windows, a vehicle that cost more than the annual maintenance budget of my parents' entire fleet. I slid into the driver's seat. The leather was cool against my skin. I placed the crumpled $20 bill in the cup holder, then pressed the button on my steering wheel. Connect to Samantha. My chief operating officer picked up on the first ring. "Status." "They took the bait," I said, my voice flat. "They think the buyer is a 70-year-old man named Mr. Vane who wants to save their legacy. They have no idea Vane is a holding shell I created this morning." "Are we proceeding with the soft acquisition?" Samantha asked. "No," I said. "Execute the hard takeover. Trigger the insolvency clause. I want the debt purchased by midnight. I want to own every single liability attached to Miller Logistics before they wake up tomorrow." "Understood. The transfer is initiated. Natalie." "You know, once we do this, there is no going back. You own the debt, you own them." "I know." I ended the call. I did not feel guilty. Guilt is for people who owe something. I had paid my dues. For years, people have asked me how I hid a $12 million net worth from the people who raised me. They assume I must be a pathological liar, spinning elaborate webs of deception to keep my double life a secret. But that gives Susan and Geoffrey too much credit. I never lied to them. Not once. I simply utilized a strategy I call the architect of silence. It works like this: you only answer the questions you are asked. And when people are narcissists, they never ask questions about anyone but themselves. When I started Apex Innovations in my dorm room, my mother called to complain about the color of her new curtains. She did not ask what I was doing, so I did not tell her. When I landed my first 6-figure contract, my father called to brag about a golf score. He did not ask how my day was, so I did not tell him. When Apex went public and my face was on the cover of a tech magazine, I left a copy on their coffee table during a visit. They used it as a coaster for their martinis. Their neglect was my camouflage. Silence was not a wall I built to keep them out. It was the vacuum they created by never caring enough to enter. I drove toward the city, the skyline glittering ahead. I thought about the forensic accounting report Samantha had sent me yesterday. Miller Logistics was not just struggling, it was being cannibalized. My parents had drained $2.4 million from the company accounts to fund their lifestyle. They were funding their success image by stealing from the pension funds of employees who had worked for them for 30 years. They called me a clerk. They called me small. but tonight I was the only thing standing between them and a federal indictment for embezzlement. I was not saving them because I loved them. I was acquiring them because I refused to let their incompetence destroy the innocent families relying on those paychecks. This was not a family reunion. It was a hostile merger, and I was the majority shareholder. The sunrise the next morning did not bring warmth. It brought a deadline. I sat at my kitchen island, surrounded by forensic accounting reports and employee rosters. The coffee in my mug was black and bitter, exactly how I needed it. My phone buzzed. The screen lit up with the word "Mother." I did not answer on the first ring. I let it buzz 3 times, finishing a paragraph about the misappropriated pension funds before I swiped green. Natalie, Susan's voice was sharp, cutting through the morning silence like a serrated knife. "Where are you? I have been calling for 5 minutes. We need you to run to the dry cleaners. Your father's tuxedo is not ready, and the catering for the victory party needs to be double-checked. Make yourself useful for once." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the list of names on my screen, 215 employees, who had no idea their bosses were looting the ship before jumping into a lifeboat. "I am busy, Mother," I said calmly. "Busy doing what? Filing papers? Listen to me. Tonight is the most important night of our lives. Mr. Vane is signing the final purchase agreement at 6 o'clock. Once that ink is dry, we are free. And do you know what the first thing I am going to do is?" She did not wait for an answer. She never did. "I am going to trim the fat," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that made my skin crawl. "That receptionist, Mrs. Higgins, she is gone. She is too old, she moves too slow, and she smells like peppermint. And the warehouse manager, David, he is always complaining about safety protocols. Gone. We are going to fire the dead weight and hand the new owner a lean, mean operation." My hand tightened around the phone. Mrs. Higgins had sent me birthday cards every year when my own parents forgot. David had worked double shifts without overtime pay just to keep the fleet running. They were not dead weight. They were the only things keeping Miller Logistics upright. "You are firing the people who built your company," I asked. "We are maximizing profit," she corrected. "Hold on, your father wants to say something." There was a fumbling sound, and then Jeffrey's booming voice filled the line. He sounded giddy, almost manic. "Natalie, did your mother tell you? We pulled it off." The inspectors did not even look behind the north wall of the warehouse. I looked at the structural integrity report on my laptop. The thermal scans I had ordered last week showed the anomaly clearly. "The water damage?" I asked. "The black mold," Jeffrey laughed. "We stacked 40 crates of expired inventory in front of it, painted right over the cracks. If Mr. Vane wants to fix it, that is his problem. By the time he finds it, we will be in the Maldives." The cruelty was breathtaking. They were gleeful about selling a rotting carcass to a stranger. They thought they were the smartest people in the room. They thought they were escaping a burning building after locking the doors on their staff. "That sounds thorough," I said. "It is business, honey," Jeffrey said dismissively. "You would not understand. Just get the dry cleaning, and try to dress decent tonight. We don't want you looking like the help." The line went dead. I set the phone down on the marble counter. The anger did not feel hot this time. It felt cold, heavy, and solid like a judge's gavel. I looked back at the employee roster. Up until this moment, buying the company had been about justice for myself. But now it was a rescue mission. I picked up my phone and dialed Samantha. "Is the paperwork ready for the meeting?" I asked. "It is." "Are you sure you want to do this face to face?" "No," I said, standing up and walking to the window. "I need to see them. I need to look them in the eye when the world stops spinning. Make sure the security team is on standby." I went to my closet. I pushed past the soft cardigans and sensible slacks I wore to family dinners to make myself look small. I reached into the back and pulled out a garment bag. Inside was a tailored navy suit, sharp enough to cut glass. It was time to show them exactly who they had been talking to all these years. I stood facing the floor-to-ceiling windows of Apex Innovation's main conference room, looking down at the city. From up here, everything looked orderly. It was a stark contrast to the chaos I knew was about to erupt behind me. Samantha sat at the head of the mahogany table, calm and terrifyingly efficient. "They are here," she said without looking up. "Reception says they tried to get the security guard fired for asking for ID." "Sounds about right," I murmured. The double doors swung open. Finally, my mother's voice echoed off the glass walls. "Do you know how long we have been waiting downstairs? This Mr. Vane better be worth it." I did not turn around. I watched their reflection in the window. They walked right past Samantha, ignoring her completely. "Excuse me," Jeffrey barked at Samantha. "Where is he? We have a 6 o'clock dinner reservation to celebrate, so let us get this over with. Is he in the bathroom? Samantha slowly set down her tablet. Mr. Vane could not make it, she said, her voice cool. But the CEO of the acquiring firm is here to finalize the details. Susan scoffed, throwing her designer bag onto one of the leather chairs. Well, where is he? Don't tell me he sent his secretary to close a multi-million-dollar deal. The CEO is right there, Samantha said, pointing a manicured finger toward the window. Toward me. Jeffrey squinted at my back. Who is that? Another assistant. Hey you, grab us some coffee. Black for me, herbal tea for my wife, and be quick about it. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the insult wash over me one last time. I don't think we have herbal tea, I said, my voice low and steady. Then run down to the lobby and get some, Susan snapped. God, good help is impossible to find these days. No wonder this place is buying us out. They probably need real leadership. I turned around. The silence that followed was not just quiet. It was a physical force. It sucked the air out of the room. Susan froze mid-gesture. Jeffrey's eyes bulged. They stared at the suit, the hair, the office that screamed power. Natalie, Susan whispered. What are you doing here? Did you get a job cleaning the offices? I walked slowly to the head of the table, standing right next to Samantha. I placed my hands on the leather CEO's chair. No, Mother, I said, my voice cutting through the room like a laser. I did not get a job cleaning the offices. I own the building. Jeffrey laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. Very funny, Natalie. Did you sneak in? Is this a prank? You are going to get arrested? Get out of here before the real boss comes back. The real boss is standing right in front of you, Samantha said, sliding a thick file across the table. This is Apex Innovations. And that she nodded at me is the founder and CEO. I picked up the file. It was the purchase agreement for Miller Logistics. Please sit down, I said. We have a lot to discuss. Specifically the $2.4 million you stole from your own company. They did not sit. They looked at me like I had grown a second head. The arrogance was starting to crack, replaced by a creeping cold dread. They were beginning to realize that the low-level clerk they had mocked for years was a giant they had failed to notice. And she was holding the magnifying glass. Samantha watched Jeffrey laugh with a kind of clinical detachment. She picked up her coffee, took a sip, and then dropped the file onto the table. It landed with a heavy authoritative thud that silenced the room. Did you bring coffee? Jeffrey sputtered, still trying to force the joke. I brought something better, Samantha said. I brought the forensic audit of Miller Logistics, dating back 5 years. You might find page 14 particularly interesting. Susan reached for the file, her hands trembling slightly. What is this? What are you playing at, Natalie? If this is some kind of joke to get back at us for not inviting you to the gala last year, it is not funny. It is not a joke, I said. And it is not about the gala. It is about the fraud. Jeffrey's face went from red to gray. Fraud. How dare you? We run a clean business. Do you? I asked, picking up my own copy of the report. Because according to this, you have been soliciting bridge loans from 6 different investors, including our neighbors, the Thompsons, using a forged letter of intent from Apex Innovations. You told them Apex had already agreed to buy you out for $10 million, I continued. You used my company's name, my reputation, to secure personal loans. That is securities fraud, Father. That is a felony. We were just leveraging the deal, Jeffrey stammered. It was a sure thing, Mr. Vane said. Mr. Vane does not exist. I cut him off. I created him. The only reason you thought you had a buyer was because I decided to buy you. And you were so arrogant you never even checked the Apex website to see that my face is listed as the founder. Susan looked at the file, then at me, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. You spied on us, she hissed. I did due diligence, I corrected. Something you should have done before stealing from your own pension fund. I flipped to the next page. $2.4 million. That is how much you have drained from the company. That is why there were no raises last year. That is why the trucks are breaking down. We raised you, Jeffrey shouted, slamming his hand on the table. We gave you everything. You gave me the bare minimum required by law, I said, my voice cold. And you made me pay for it with my dignity every single day. You called me a clerk. You mocked my small life. Meanwhile, I was building the company you were pretending to sell to. I stood up and walked to the window. You thought I was small because I was quiet. But silence is not weakness. It is where you hear the things people are trying to hide. And I heard everything. Samantha leaned forward. The district attorney is very interested in cases like this. We have the affidavit ready. All Natalie has to do is sign it. Susan made a small, strangled whimper. The arrogance was gone. They looked at each other, realizing for the first time that there was no way out. The low-level clerk held the keys to their prison cell. "What do you want?" Jeffrey whispered. I sat back down in the CEO's chair. "I want you to listen. The human brain has a safety mechanism. When reality shifts too drastically, the mind rejects it. It is called cognitive dissonance. I watched it happen in real time. You cannot buy us," Jeffrey stammered. "We are your parents. We raised you to be this successful. Without us, you would be nothing." I did not blink. "You raised me to be invisible," I corrected. "My success is despite you, not because of you." "But—" "The money," Susan whispered, clutching her pearls. "We are selling for 10 million. That is the deal. We retire. We go to the Maldives." "The purchase price is $1, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. $1, Jeffrey screamed, standing up so abruptly his chair tipped over. "Are you insane? The company is worth millions." "The company," I said, sliding the valuation report across the table, "is worth negative $2.4 million. That is the debt you accrued. I am buying the debt. I am assuming the liability. Your equity is zero. Your payout is zero." They stared at the document. The numbers were undeniable. "We have rights," Susan shrieked. "We will sue. We will tell everyone what you did." "Go ahead," I said, "but before you do, you might want to look at page 22. Samantha flipped the file open. "This is the affidavit for the district attorney. It details the securities fraud, the embezzlement, and the tax evasion." Jeffrey collapsed back into his chair, his face ashen. He wasn't the powerful patriarch anymore. He was a criminal caught in the headlights. "Please," he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "Natalie, sweetheart, think about what this will do to our reputation. The Thompsons, the club, we will be ruined." "You ruined yourselves," I said. "I am just the one cleaning up the mess." Susan lunged forward, grabbing my hand. "We are family. You cannot send your own parents to prison. We made mistakes, yes, but we did it for the family, for you." I pulled my hand away. It felt cold where she had touched me. "Do not insult my intelligence by pretending you did any of this for me. You did it for the Porsches. You did it for the status." I stood up, towering over them. "Here are your options. Option A, you walk out of here and Samantha sends this file to the DA. You go to prison for 10 to 15 years. Option B, you sign the acquisition papers. I absorb the debt. I save the company. I save the employees." "And us?" Jeffrey asked, his voice barely a squeak. "What happens to us?" "You sign," I said, pointing to the line at the bottom of the contract. "And then we discuss your new roles." They looked at each other. They looked at the file. There was no escape. Trembling, Jeffrey picked up the pen. He signed his name. Susan followed, sobbing quietly. It was done. I owned Miller Logistics. I owned their debt. And for the first time in my life, I owned the narrative. But I was not finished. "One last thing," I said. "Read the employment clause." The pen scratched against the paper, a final jagged sound in the silent room. They looked defeated, hollowed out. They thought they had survived. They thought they could walk out of this building and retire to a smaller, quieter life. They were wrong. "Excellent," Samantha said. "The acquisition is complete. Apex Innovations now owns Miller Logistics." "Can we go now?" Jeffrey asked. "Not quite," I said. "There is one final clause you need to be aware of. Clause 14B, the Transition Consulting Agreement." Susan frowned. "What does that mean, we are consulting?" "In a manner of speaking," I said. "You see, the district attorney was willing to hold off on the indictment for securities fraud on one condition: restitution. You have to pay back the money you stole. But since you have zero equity, you are going to pay it back with labor." "Labor," Jeffrey repeated. "For the next 2 years, I explained, you will both remain employed at Miller Logistics as transition consultants to facilitate the handover." "That does not sound so bad," Susan said, a flicker of hope returning. "We can work from home." "No," I cut her off. "You will work on site, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Your office will be the converted storage room on the ground floor. You will report directly to the new regional manager, Kevin. He is 24 and very detail-oriented." "You cannot be serious," Susan gasped. "Reporting to a child, working in a storage room." "And the salary?" I continued. "Your combined compensation will be $72,000 a year. That is $36,000 each." $36,000, Jeffrey choked. "That is poverty wages. We cannot live on that." "Funny," I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "That is exactly the salary you told me was perfectly adequate for a low-level clerk when you mocked me at dinner last night. You said I should be grateful. So be grateful." I quit, Susan screamed. You cannot quit, Samantha interjected smoothly. If you resign before the 2-year term is up, the immunity deal with the DA is voided and the evidence goes straight to a grand jury. You work for Natalie or you go to prison. They looked at me. For the first time, they did not see a disappointment. They saw the architect. They saw the bars of the cage they had built for themselves. Why are you doing this? Jeffrey whispered. Is this revenge? No, I said, standing up and buttoning my suit jacket. Revenge would be firing you and letting you starve. This is rehabilitation. You are going to learn what it feels like to work for a living. You are going to learn the value of $1. And maybe in 2 years you will understand why I never told you about my life. Because I was busy building something real while you were busy pretending. I walked to the door. Welcome to Apex Innovations, I said over my shoulder. Don't be late tomorrow. Kevin hates tardiness. I walked back to my office, the quiet hum of the building surrounding me. I sat at my desk and pulled the wrinkled $20 bill from my pocket. I smoothed it out on the glass surface. It was not just money anymore. It was a receipt for the price of my freedom. I placed it in a small frame on my desk, right next to a photo of my real team, the people who had built this company with me. I picked up the phone and dialed the break room. Hey David, order dinner for the whole team. On the company card. And David, make sure everyone knows their jobs are safe. We are just getting started. Sometimes the best revenge isn't burning the house down. It's buying the deed. If you've ever had to succeed in silence to protect your peace, share this story. You never know who needs to hear it.